Some moments change everything. True or false? Let's find out in this story of a kind waitress feeds quiet boy. In the fading light of a Tuesday afternoon, Willow Creek's only diner stood like a stubborn relic on the edge of town. Its neon sign flickered against the darkening sky, a beacon for weary travelers and locals alike. Inside, Sarah Dalton wiped down the counter for what felt like the 1,000th time that day. Double shifts had become her normal, dreams of art school buried beneath mounting bills and a sick mother who needed her care. At 28, her world had narrowed to this: 60-hour workweeks, instant coffee, and quiet prayers that the car would start tomorrow morning. That's when she noticed him. A small boy, no older than 10, sitting alone in the farthest booth. His clothes hung loose on his thin frame, sneakers worn through at the edges. He stared at plates of food passing by, saying nothing, ordering nothing, just waiting. Some might have ignored him, asked him to order or leave. But Sarah saw something familiar in those eyes. Without a word, she filled a plate with the day's special, set it before him, and walked away. No questions. No expectations. Just simple kindness in a world that had often forgotten what that looked like. She couldn't have known then that this ordinary moment would ripple across years and distances. That this simple act would one day return to her in ways she couldn't imagine. Because 3 years later, the quiet routine of Willow Creek would shatter like glass. 3 black SUVs, sleek and imposing, would roll down Main Street like something from another world. And Sarah's life would never be the same. What happens when kindness comes full circle? When the hand you once extended returns to lift you higher than you ever dreamed possible? This is that story. In a world that teaches us to look out for ourselves, sometimes the smallest act of compassion can alter not just one life, but 2. Sometimes, giving without expectation plants seeds for miracles we never see coming. Before we continue with this incredible journey, I want to thank you for being here with us. Each video we create takes over 40 hours of research, writing, filming, and meticulous editing to bring these stories to life. If you're feeling moved by Sarah's story so far, please consider hitting that subscribe button to support our work. It takes just 1 second of your time but gives our small team the encouragement to keep finding and sharing these remarkable human stories. Now, let's return to Willow Creek and discover what happened next. To understand the weight of what was about to happen to Sarah, we need to step back. We need to understand the life she built, the dreams she abandoned, and the quiet strength that kept her standing when the world seemed determined to knock her down. Sarah's life wasn't always defined by endless shifts and faded dreams. To understand the weight of what was about to happen, we need to look deeper into the quiet battles she fought each day and the strength it took just to keep standing. Sarah Dalton grew up understanding one truth above all others: survival requires sacrifice. Her mother raised her alone after her father vanished when Sarah was just 5 years old. The memory of him had faded to little more than a feeling: warm hands, the scent of pine, laughter that filled rooms. What remained vivid was the aftermath. Her mother working 2 jobs, bills spread across the kitchen table late at night, whispered phone calls negotiating for more time. "We make do with what we have," her mother would say. "And we help where we can." These weren't empty words. Even in their hardest times, Sarah watched her mother set aside small treasures for others: a homemade meal for a sick neighbor, babysitting for a single father down the street, anonymous grocery store gift cards slipped into mailboxes at Christmas. Sarah absorbed these lessons like sunlight. By 17, she'd mapped out her escape: art school in Chicago, a scholarship application hidden beneath her mattress, portfolio pieces created during lunch breaks at school. Her teachers called her gifted. For the first time, the world seemed wider than Willow Creek. Then came her mother's diagnosis: multiple sclerosis. Progressive. Expensive. The scholarship letter arrived the same week as the medical bills. Sarah never mentioned the acceptance letter. She tucked it away in a shoebox, along with her dreams, and picked up extra shifts at the diner instead. Art supplies gradually disappeared from her room, replaced by nursing textbooks borrowed from the library, prescription bottles, and a calendar marked with doctor's appointments. 10 years passed this way. Sarah at the diner 6 days a week, caring for her mother on the 7th. Her paintings, when she found time to create them, piled in the corner of the garage, unseen by anyone. At 28, she'd become invisible in her own life, a supporting character in everyone else's story. But hardship hadn't hardened her. If anything, It had done the opposite, softened her edges, made her more attuned to the quiet suffering of others. She noticed what most people missed: the elderly customer who came in more for conversation than coffee, the young mother counting change before ordering, the new waitress struggling to make rent. Which is why, on that ordinary Tuesday, she noticed the boy immediately. He sat differently than the other customers, perched at the edge of the booth like he might need to run. His eyes tracked the plates of food with an intensity that spoke volumes. When the dinner rush slowed, Sarah watched him from behind the counter, something familiar echoing in her chest. "You okay there, honey?" she'd asked, approaching his table. His eyes darted up, then down. "Just waiting," he mumbled. "For someone." A slight hesitation. Then a nod. Sarah had seen this before, the careful lie, the practiced story. She'd told similar ones herself as a child when her mother couldn't afford school lunch programs. "Well, it's pretty quiet tonight. Mind if I bring you something while you wait? On the house. Cook made too much meatloaf anyway." Before he could respond, she was already heading toward the kitchen. No fanfare, no announcement, just simple kindness offered casually, preserving his dignity. She returned with a full plate, set it down with a glass of milk, and walked away without lingering, giving him space to eat without an audience. From the corner of her eye, she watched him devour the food like it was his first meal in days. It might have been. When he finished, she brought him a slice of pie, also extra. Don't like wasting food. Another small fiction to protect his pride. As her shift ended, the boy had already disappeared. No goodbye, no thank you. Just an empty plate and a carefully folded napkin. Sarah thought little of it as she clocked out. She'd likely never see him again. What she couldn't know was that this small moment, this ordinary act of seeing someone invisible, would echo across years. That the universe sometimes keeps precise accounts of kindness given freely. Sarah's life continued its narrow path. Her mother's condition worsened. The bills multiplied. The diner changed owners twice. Through it all, she kept moving forward, one foot in front of the other, finding moments of grace in small things. The perfect light at sunset, a patient smile, the rare hour she could steal away to paint in the garage. She'd learned to want less, to expect less. To find contentment in what she had rather than longing for what she didn't. This wasn't resignation, it was adaptation. The quiet strength of someone who'd made peace with her circumstances. But the universe wasn't finished with Sarah Dalton yet. Not by a long shot. Sometimes the people who deserve the most from life receive the least. And sometimes, those who give despite having little to give discover that kindness isn't just a gift to others, it's an investment in an unseen future that's quietly taking shape around them. Have you ever performed a small act of kindness that stayed with you long after? Or has someone's unexpected generosity changed the course of your day when you needed it most? Share your experience in the comments below. We read every single one and find so much inspiration in your stories. For 3 years, Sarah continued her quiet life in Willow Creek, unaware that anything had changed. After that Tuesday evening, the boy returned to the diner several more times over the next few months. Each visit followed the same quiet ritual, Sarah providing a meal without fanfare, the boy accepting without words. A delicate dance of dignity preserved on both sides. Until suddenly, without warning, he was gone. Absence has a weight all its own. The first week the boy didn't appear, Sarah barely noticed. Children's lives change, families move, routines shift, problems resolve themselves. By the second week, she found herself glancing at the empty booth each time the bell above the door chimed. By the third week, a nagging worry had settled in her chest. "You looking for your charity case?" Darlene, the other waitress, asked one evening, following Sarah's gaze to the empty booth. "Probably found another sucker to feed him for free." Sarah's smile remained fixed, professional. "Just checking tables." But the truth was more complicated. In their brief encounters, Sarah had noticed things about the boy: a certain rigidity in his posture, eyes too old for his face, the careful way he ate as if savoring every bite. Not the behavior of a typical child looking for handouts. Something in him reminded her of herself at that age, carrying adult burdens with child-sized shoulders. As a month passed without sign of him, Sarah found herself preparing an extra meal during slow periods. Nothing elaborate, just a sandwich wrapped carefully in wax paper, a piece of fruit, a cookie from the bakery case. She'd leave it on the table where he usually sat, just in case. "You're wasting food," Mark, the diner owner, finally commented after watching this ritual repeat for 2 weeks. His voice wasn't unkind, just puzzled. "And money." "My money, technically." Sarah met his eyes steadily. "I'll pay for it. Out of my check." Mark studied her face, then sighed. "No need." "But Sarah, don't get your hopes up. People leave. That's what they do." The town noticed her peculiar habit. Small places like Willow Creek metabolize gossip like oxygen. Some found it endearing. That's just Sarah, heart bigger than her bank account. Others found it foolish. Classic Sarah Dalton, always taking in strays that never stay. Someone snapped a photo of her leaving food at the empty booth and posted it to the town's Facebook group. The comments ranged from supportive to mocking. "This is why we love Willow Creek. Real community. Maybe spend that money on your mom's meds instead of feeding ghosts." "Somebody tell her he's not coming back." Oh. Sarah never checked social media. Her world remained analog, handwritten notes, face-to-face conversations, the rhythmic routine of work and home care. She continued leaving meals even as summer faded to fall, and fall chilled into winter. At home, her mother noticed the strain. "Something's bothering you," she observed one evening as Sarah helped her into bed. "You're carrying it like a stone." Sarah adjusted the blankets. Buying time. "It's nothing. Just work." Sarah Elizabeth Dalton. "I may be sick, but I'm not blind. Tell me." The story spilled out. The boy, the meals, the disappearance, her inexplicable need to keep waiting. When she finished, her mother reached for her hand. "You remember what your father used to say?" Sarah shook her head. Memories of her father were precious few. He said kindness is never wasted. Even when it seems to disappear into thin air, it's changing the atmosphere. Her mother's smile was tired but warm. "You keep leaving those meals if it feels right. Some things can't be explained, only followed." 23 days. That's how long Sarah continued her vigil after that conversation. 23 meals left at an empty booth, 23 quiet hopes releasing into the universe. 23 reminders to herself that in a world of people who walk away, she would be someone who stays. On the 23rd day, snow fell in thick curtains, turning Willow Creek into a snow globe version of itself. The diner was nearly empty, too cold for casual outings, too slippery for the elderly regulars. Sarah wrapped the day's offering, turkey sandwich, apple, chocolate chip cookie, and placed it at the booth more out of habit than hope. She had just returned to the counter when the bell above the door chimed. Not the ordinary jingle of a single customer, but a rush of sound as the door was held open longer than usual. Sarah looked up. 3 men in military dress uniforms stood in the entrance, snow melting on their shoulders. Behind them, through the windows, she could see the outline of vehicles far more imposing than anything that usually parked on Main Street. "We're looking for Sarah Dalton," one of them said, removing his hat. The moment hung suspended, a breath between what had been and what would be. Sarah felt time slow, crystallize. Something was ending. Something was beginning. "That's me," she said, voice steadier than she felt. The lead officer stepped forward, extending a white envelope. "Ma'am, we've been looking for you." Faith isn't always loud declarations or grand gestures. Sometimes it's as quiet as a sandwich left at an empty table, day after day. Sometimes hope looks like stubbornness to those who've never had to cling to it. And sometimes, when we think we're waiting for someone else to return, we're actually waiting for our own lives to begin. Would you continue to hold out hope if someone important suddenly disappeared from your life? What would you do differently than Sarah? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We're always moved by your personal stories and perspectives. As Sarah accepted the envelope with trembling hands, questions flooded her mind. How had these military officers connected her to the boy? Why had he vanished? And what could possibly be inside this envelope that required men in uniform to deliver it personally? The answers would redefine everything she thought she knew about that simple act of kindness months ago. The white envelope trembled in Sarah's hands as the military officers stood at attention before her. The diner had fallen completely silent. Even the kitchen staff had emerged to witness this unprecedented scene. Whatever was happening transcended the ordinary boundaries of life in Willow Creek, and everyone knew it. The moment before revelation has a texture all its own. "Ma'am," the lead officer began, his voice carrying the weight of formality, "we're here on behalf of—" The diner's door flew open again, cutting him off. A fourth figure stepped through, younger than the officers, dressed in an impeccable charcoal suit rather than military dress. He removed dark sunglasses despite the winter gloom outside, revealing eyes that Sarah felt she should recognize. The diner had gathered an audience now. Darlene had stopped mid-pour at a customer's cup. Mark stood frozen in the kitchen doorway. Even Mrs. Henderson, who'd been complaining about her toast being too dark, sat with her mouth slightly open. The young man in the suit stood perfectly still, studying Sarah's face. Something flickered in his expression, uncertainty, perhaps, or vulnerability at odds with his polished appearance. Then he spoke, voice steady but soft. "Hello, Sarah." She didn't recognize him, not immediately. But something about the way he stood, slightly rigid, weight shifted to one side, triggered a distant memory. "It's been a while," he continued, "since you served me meatloaf and told me the cook made too much." Pause. The world tilted beneath Sarah's feet. This poised young man, 20 now? 21. Couldn't possibly be the small boy who'd sat quietly in her booth nearly 10 years ago. And yet, "You," she whispered. Outside, the commotion had grown. Through the windows, Sarah could see the 3 black SUVs parked along Main Street, their government plates and tinted windows drawing a crowd of townspeople. Some pointed phones at the vehicles, while others clustered in small groups, theories spreading like wildfire. Inside, the young man, no longer a boy, stepped forward, extending his hand. "Ethan Cross," he said formally. "I'm sorry to arrive like this. I wanted something less dramatic. But security protocols." He gestured vaguely toward the officers. Sarah barely registered his words. Her mind struggled to reconcile the half-starved child with this confident figure before her. The boy she'd worried over, left meals for, wondered about for years, transformed into someone who traveled with a military escort. "You disappeared," she finally managed, finding her voice. "I left food for you. 4 weeks." Something softened in Ethan's expression. "I know. They told me, later. I would have come back if I could." By now, the diner had transformed into an impromptu town hall. The bell above the door chimed constantly as locals found excuses to come inside. Mayor Wilson arrived, straightening his tie as he entered. Sheriff Parker followed, looking both official and bewildered. The high school principal. The newspaper editor. All drawn by the magnetic pull of the extraordinary invading their ordinary. "Perhaps we could sit," Ethan suggested, gesturing toward a booth. Not just any booth, but the booth. His booth. Sarah nodded, still processing. As they moved toward the table, the military officers positioned themselves discreetly around the diner. One spoke quietly into a wrist microphone, while another stood near the door. The third remained close to Ethan, scanning the crowd with practiced vigilance. "I apologize for the circus," Ethan said as they sat a day. "I tried to keep this low-key, but—" He smiled ruefully. "My security team has opinions about how I travel." Sarah found herself staring at his hands, adult hands now, but she could still see traces of the child's fingers that had once carefully folded that napkin. "Who are you?" she finally asked. Ethan looked momentarily surprised. Then understanding dawned. "You don't know. Of course, you wouldn't. You don't follow tech news." "Tech news." From the counter, Darlene gasped loudly enough to draw their attention. She was staring at her phone, then at Ethan, then back at her phone. "You're that Ethan Cross?" Darlene blurted. "Crosspath AI. The quantum computing breakthrough. The Fortune 30 under 30 cover." Ethan nodded slightly, seeming almost embarrassed. Around the diner, people began frantically searching on their phones, whispers escalating as recognition spread. Mayor Wilson straightened his tie again, edging closer. "Crosspath is valued at over 40 billion, someone murmured loudly enough for everyone to hear. He's worth at least 15 billion himself." Sarah sat perfectly still, the numbers washing over her without meaning. Not because she couldn't comprehend the amount, but because it seemed entirely disconnected from the boy she'd once fed, from this moment, from this conversation. "I don't understand," she said quietly. "Why are you here?" Ethan's professional veneer cracked slightly. For just a moment, she glimpsed something of the vulnerable child in his eyes. "You really don't remember, do you?" he asked, voice softer now. "What you said to me?" Sarah shook her head slowly. "You brought me that meatloaf. And when I asked why, you said, because everyone deserves to be seen. Not fed. Not helped. Seen." He leaned forward slightly. "Do you have any idea what that meant to a kid who'd been invisible his entire life?" The memory returned to Sarah in fragments, the boy's surprised expression, her casual words meant to preserve his dignity. She hadn't thought them significant. Hadn't considered them worthy of remembering. "I was living in my car that month," Ethan continued quietly. "My mother had left. My father was deployed overseas. I was too proud, too scared to tell anyone. I'd been hungry for 3 days when you fed me." Sarah felt tears threatening. "I didn't know. You didn't need to know. That was the point." Ethan's smile held decades of meaning. "You saw me without needing my story, without demanding my gratitude, without making me earn basic human kindness." Outside, more vehicles had arrived, sleek town cars with drivers standing alongside, a small security team establishing a perimeter. Whatever Ethan Cross had become in the world, it required protection, coordination, resources Sarah could barely imagine. "I've spent 10 years building something," Ethan said. "Technology that helps people. Solutions that matter. And every time someone asks what drives me, I think about that meatloaf. About being seen when I was invisible." His hand moved across the table, hesitating just short of touching hers, the adult now uncertain where the child had been sure. "I've wanted to thank you for a very long time, Sarah Dalton." Around them, the world had receded to a distant hum. The curious onlookers, the security detail, the town's collective inhale, all of it faded against the simple truth of two souls reconnecting across time. "You don't owe me anything," Sarah said softly. "It was just a meal." Ethan shook his head slowly. "It was never just a meal. We never truly know the impact of our kindness. A moment we might forget becomes the cornerstone of someone else's foundation. The hand we extend in an ordinary moment might be grasping a future we cannot see, one that might someday circle back to find us. If you could reconnect with someone from your past who made an impact on your life, who would it be and why? Perhaps there's someone whose kindness changed your path, or whose words still guide you today. Share your story in the comments below." As the diner buzzed with excited whispers, neither Sarah nor Ethan noticed. They remained locked in a moment of recognition that transcended the spectacle around them. But what Sarah couldn't yet grasp was that Ethan hadn't come merely to offer thanks. He had come with a proposal that would challenge everything she believed about her place in the world. The diner had transformed into two distinct worlds, the buzzing crowd of onlookers speculating about billion-dollar valuations and tech empires, and the quiet bubble surrounding Sarah and Ethan, where time seemed to move differently. As the initial shock of recognition settled, Ethan leaned forward, ready to share the journey that had brought him from a hungry boy to the man sitting before her. "Stories have power. But some stories change everything. After that day you fed me," Ethan began, "things got worse before they got better." His voice remained steady, but his eyes held shadows of old pain. He explained how his father, a special forces operator, had been injured in Afghanistan shortly after their first meeting. Communication had been sporadic, leaving 12-year-old Ethan essentially on his own. "I was sleeping in the car, showering at the school gym, doing homework by streetlight. I had maybe 2 weeks before someone would notice and put me in the system. Then my father's commanding officer found me." Sarah listened, her coffee untouched, as Ethan described being taken in by his father's military family. Not formal foster care, but a network of service members looking after one of their own. He'd moved in with Colonel Richardson's family in Virginia. "They gave me stability, structure, but something else stayed with me." Ethan's gaze held Sarah's. "That meal you gave me. The way you did it. I couldn't shake it." When Richardson discovered Ethan's aptitude for mathematics and computing, doors began to open. A special program for gifted students. Early admission to MIT at 16. By 19, He developed an algorithm that revolutionized how artificial intelligence processed natural language. "People call me a prodigy," he said, dismissing the word with a slight gesture. "But what they don't see is that success isn't just about intelligence. It's about believing you deserve to succeed. Before you really saw me, I didn't believe that." Ethan described founding CrossPath AI at 21, turning down billion-dollar acquisition offers to maintain his vision, technology that served humanity rather than exploiting it. His company specialized in systems that could predict resource allocation for disaster response, optimize medical care in underserved regions, and create educational tools that adapted to individual learning styles. "People ask about my origin story in interviews," he said with a small smile. "Tech founders are supposed to have some dramatic moment of inspiration. I've never told them about you, about that meal. I couldn't risk them finding you before I could thank you myself." Outside, more vehicles had arrived. Through the window, Sarah glimpsed news vans setting up, reporters gesturing toward the diner. Willow Creek's unexpected moment in the spotlight was growing. "But I still don't understand," Sarah said, drawing her attention back to Ethan. "Why now? After all these years?" Ethan nodded, acknowledging the question's weight. "Two reasons. First, my father passed away last month. His final request was that I make things right with the people who mattered. You were at the top of that list, even though he never met you. He knew your story." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "I'm sorry about your father." "Thank you." Ethan's composure wavered briefly. "The second reason is this." He reached into his suit jacket and removed a folded document, placing it carefully on the table between them. "When I was 14, I made a promise to myself. If I ever had the means, I would find you and repay what you gave me. Not the meal, the dignity, the hope." His voice remained steady, but his eyes betrayed deeper emotion. "It took years to track you down. You're remarkably off the grid, Sarah Dalton." Sarah smiled slightly. "No social media. No need for it." "Exactly. But once I found you, I learned everything." He hesitated. "Your mother's condition. The art school scholarship you turned down. The paintings no one sees. The second job you took last year when the medical bills increased." Sarah stiffened. "You investigated me? I wanted to understand what you needed. What would matter to you?" Ethan gestured toward the document. "This is my offer, but it's not charity. It's an investment in someone who saw value in me when I couldn't see it in myself." With hesitant fingers, Sarah unfolded the document. As she read, her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. The document outlined several things: full medical care for her mother at the nation's leading MS treatment center, a home large enough for both of them, with accessibility features and a dedicated art studio, a trust fund ensuring neither would ever worry about bills again, and most surprisingly, a building in downtown Willow Creek, transformed into an art gallery bearing Sarah's name. "This is..." Sarah struggled to find words, looking up at him. "This is too much. Millions of dollars. I can't accept this." "It's not charity," Ethan repeated firmly. "The gallery will showcase local artists, create jobs, bring visitors to Willow Creek, and your work will be the cornerstone exhibition." "My work isn't ready for that. It's just..." "I've seen your paintings, Sarah." Ethan's interruption was gentle but certain. "Those canvases in your garage? They're extraordinary. The world should see them." Sarah sat back, overwhelmed. In the background, the diner's normal sounds had given way to a constant murmur of excitement. Mayor Wilson hovered nearby, clearly hoping to be introduced. Sheriff Parker was outside, directing traffic around the growing media presence. Darlene was blatantly eavesdropping while pretending to wipe down a nearby table. "I had dreams once," Sarah said quietly. "But I made my choices. I don't regret them." "I know you don't. That's why I'm here." Ethan leaned forward. "You chose your mother over your dreams. You chose a hungry kid over your tip money. You've always chosen others. I'm just asking you to let someone choose you for once." The weight of his words settled between them. Sarah looked down at her hands, calloused from work, nails trimmed short for practicality rather than beauty. Hands that had served others for so long they'd forgotten how to receive. "My mother," she finally said. "She might not have much time left." Ethan nodded. "All the more reason to let her see you step into your gift. To watch you become who you were meant to be before she goes." Sarah hadn't realized she was crying until a tear splashed onto the document between them. "Why would you do this? Really? One meal doesn't equal." She gestured at the paper. "All this." Ethan's expression softened further. "Because when I built my company, I established a principle. Use our success to create ripples of positive change. Just like you did for me." He reached across the table, finally allowing his hand to rest on hers. "This isn't about a debt, Sarah. It's about continuing a circle that you started." Beyond their bubble, Willow Creek was transforming by the minute. News had spread through town that Ethan Cross, tech visionary, billionaire, philanthropist, had arrived to offer something extraordinary to their local Waitress. People who had scrolled past Sarah's story on Facebook without comment now claimed long friendships. Those who had mocked her faithfulness now spoke admiringly of her character. "There's something else," Ethan said, reaching into his pocket again. "Something personal." He withdrew a small, worn object and placed it beside the document. It was a napkin, faded, carefully preserved in what appeared to be a small protective sleeve. Sarah recognized it immediately as one from the diner, from years ago. "The napkin from that day?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "I kept it. Wherever I went. Through every foster home, every dorm room, every office. A reminder that someone once saw me when I was invisible." The simplicity of the gesture, this man with billions to his name treasuring a paper napkin for a decade, broke something open in Sarah's heart. Years of carefully constructed walls, of limited expectations and practical dreams, began to crumble. "I don't know how to step into something this big," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to know," Ethan replied. "You just have to be willing." He turned over the document, revealing a simple signature line. No complex contracts, no fine print, just an opportunity requiring only her consent to begin. "Your mother's transfer to the medical center can happen today. The gallery construction can begin next week. Your life can change right now, Sarah." He offered her a pen. "All you need to do is say yes." Sarah looked at the pen, then at Ethan's face, seeing in it traces of the hungry boy she'd once fed, now returned to nourish her dreams in return. "Yes," she said simply, taking the pen. "We cast our kindness into the world like seeds, never knowing where they might take root or what they might grow into. Sometimes those seeds vanish without trace. But sometimes, rarely, beautifully, they return to us as forests, as sanctuaries, as salvation we never saw coming. Do you believe that one small moment can truly change someone's entire life path? Has it ever happened to you, a chance encounter, a kind word, or a helping hand that altered your journey? We'd love to hear your perspective in the comments." As Sarah's signature dried on the document, something shifted in the universe, a balance restored, a circle completed. But accepting Ethan's gift would mean more than a change in Sarah's circumstances. It would require a profound transformation in how she saw herself and her place in the world. A transformation that had only just begun. The pen trembled slightly in Sarah's fingers as she signed her name. In that simple act, a door long closed was kicked wide open. The world beyond the diner's windows was already changing, but inside, something deeper was beginning. The transformation of a life once defined by sacrifice into one finally touched by possibility. At first, it didn't feel real. Sarah sat there, blinking down at the signed document, half expecting someone to shout, "Prank!" and the whole dream to dissolve into laughter. But the napkin still rested between them, a relic of a kindness long ago, and Ethan's steady, unwavering presence confirmed that this was her new reality. By that afternoon, the changes had already begun. A black SUV, polished to a mirror finish, waited outside the diner. Not for Ethan, but for Sarah. Mayor Wilson practically sprinted across Main Street, stammering out congratulations in between awkward attempts to claim he'd always believed in her. Sheriff Parker offered to personally escort her home, citing security concerns, with a wink. Inside the SUV, as they pulled away from the curb, Sarah pressed her forehead lightly against the cool window. She watched Willow Creek, The only world she'd ever known, blur past. The coffee shop where she'd sketched dreams in old notebooks. The thrift store where she'd bought supplies when money was tight. The mural she'd painted anonymously under the bridge, thinking no one would care enough to notice. Now, everything had changed. Yet she felt weightless, untethered. The drive led to a place she'd never dared imagine, a sleek, sun-filled estate on the town's outskirts. The home was breathtaking, not flashy, but built with thoughtfulness and grace. Wide doorways, ramps, and gardens designed not just for beauty, but for healing. A nurse greeted her at the door, smiling warmly. "Your mother will be here tomorrow. Everything's been arranged." Sarah felt her knees threaten to give out. It wasn't just the house. It was the life Ethan had made possible. Her mother cared for, her art given a voice, her sacrifices honored rather than forgotten. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in brilliant golds and purples, Sarah found herself standing in what would soon be her personal art studio. Light streamed through massive windows. Canvases, untouched and expectant, leaned against the walls. An easel stood waiting in the center of the room, like a quiet invitation. She touched it carefully, as if it might vanish. This space wasn't just a gift. It was a calling. But transformation wasn't just happening to Sarah. News of her story had flooded Willow Creek almost overnight. The townspeople, who once overlooked the quiet waitress at the diner, now buzzed with excitement and pride. There were whispers of hope, too. If she could have her life transformed, maybe they could, too. Local artists dusted off forgotten portfolios. Students talked about applying to programs they thought were out of reach. Darlene even mentioned, half joking, half serious, starting her own catering business. One quiet act of kindness had sent out ripples, growing wider with each person touched. Sarah's new art gallery, already under construction, wouldn't just showcase her own work. Ethan's vision had been clear. It would feature any artist with something meaningful to share. It would be a place where overlooked beauty finally had a stage. Kindness had given birth to opportunity. Opportunity was now giving birth to legacy. Yet amid all the change, Sarah wrestled with doubt. Could she really step into this new life? Could she live up to the hope others now placed in her? There were moments, late at night, staring at the ceiling, when fear whispered in her ear. "You don't deserve this. It's too much. You'll fail. But then she'd remember Ethan's words. You just have to be willing. Not perfect. Not fearless. Just willing. And slowly, she realized the truth. Transformation isn't about erasing the past. It's about honoring it, using every scar, every hard lesson, every act of quiet courage, as the foundation for something greater. Sometimes the most powerful transformations don't come from winning the lottery or finding instant fame. They come from moments of unseen grace, multiplied over time into a life you never thought you could have. The seeds we plant with love and sacrifice always grow. Sometimes it just takes a little longer to see the harvest. As Sarah stood in the center of her studio, brush in hand, the first stroke of paint marked more than a new canvas. It marked the beginning of her new journey. But transformation, as she would soon discover, wasn't just about creating art. It was about becoming art herself, a living masterpiece shaped by resilience, hope, and the kindness she once gave so freely. What would you do if someone offered you a chance to completely transform your life overnight? Would you take it, or are there things money can't replace? Let us know your thoughts. The first stroke of paint on Sarah's new canvas marked the beginning of a life she once thought belonged to other people. People with luck, or money, or connections she never had. But now, standing at the crossroads of who she was and who she could become, Sarah was ready to live out a truth she'd unknowingly believed all along. Small kindnesses can change the world. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. There were still bills, still bad days, still moments when doubt crept in through the cracks. But now, Sarah woke up every morning to light pouring through her windows, onto blank canvases that waited for her stories, her colors, her heart. Her mother's laughter returned, soft and sure, echoing down the wide hallways of their new home. The woman who once counted pills now counted blessings instead. At the diner, yes, she still visited, the regulars spoke about her like she was a hometown legend. Kids who barely noticed her before now asked for autographs, shy and wide-eyed. The mural under the bridge? It had been cleaned up and framed with a plaque. Asterisk, dedicated to the unseen kindness that changes lives. Asterisk. Sarah sometimes sat alone in her studio, thinking back to that boy, the one who had nothing but an empty glass of water and a desperate kind of hunger in his eyes. She thought about the napkin, too. How a simple act, done without expectation, had rippled across years, and come back to find her when she needed it most. It wasn't just about the money, or the opportunities. It was about being seen. Being reminded that when you give with an open heart, even when you feel invisible, asterisk the universe remembers. Asterisk. Sometimes the harvest of a seed you plant today doesn't come for months or years. But it comes. And when it does, it's more beautiful than you could ever imagine. The truth is, we never really know the full impact of our smallest moments. A smile. A kind word. A hot meal placed gently on a table when no one else seems to notice. Each act matters. Each act multiplies. And somewhere, someday, someone will find their way back to you, carrying a blessing you never even knew you planted. Sarah's story isn't just about a chance encounter or an unexpected gift. It's about what happens when we choose to live with open hands and open hearts, even when no one is watching. Because sometimes, the extraordinary power to change the world is hidden in the most ordinary of moments. This extraordinary story reminds us that kindness ripples through time in ways we can't imagine. If this story touched you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you've experienced something similar or have thoughts on this remarkable journey, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us of the extraordinary power of ordinary people. Until next time, remember that your smallest act of kindness might just be changing someone's entire future.